Hi folks, Robert Lowell Goller here. Thank you for joining me for our weekly chats about local history. I'm in Hamlin Park at the baseball diamond, and it's quite ironic. There is a young boy playing with a model airplane behind me right now, which is, I did not plan it this way, but it's interesting that he's here right now because I want to talk about a little bit of history about this baseball diamond. I've been doing some research about Hamlin Park in particular for an upcoming book, updating some history, and this baseball diamond has some really great history. It's one probably the most historic places in our community. But one of the neat things about this baseball diamond is what happened on 4th of July's over the years. We've had World Series players, people have gone on, at least one player gone on to the World Series, at least two Major League Baseball players who've played on this baseball diamond. That's really neat history. Of course, we've had fireworks for the 4th of July. A lot of our 4th of July celebrations have been happening here, as well as some really cool baseball games over the years. And I've researched the history of this baseball diamond. That's going to be in an upcoming book. I've updated, found some more information about it, and how it became part of Hamlin Park, how the Grove was a separate part of it, grove of trees that's in this direction over here, and how that all came together in 1899. But a really cool thing about this baseball diamond, was the site of an early airplane exhibition. And it just so happens, as I was preparing for today's live stream, which we're not live, I've taped it because I'm on the road, but I discovered that the first airplane demonstration here on the 4th of July was 100 years ago. It just happened to be in 1925. However, it took 13 years to get a plane off the ground here. There was a lot of excitement, a lot of dashed hopes about an airplane being flown over Hamlin Park. So you have to go back to 1912, and what was happening back then is there had been 4th of July celebrations here way before it even became Hamlin Park. There was a grove, there still is a grove of trees, and there were 4th of July celebrations, and they had been going on for years. But in the around 1912, there was an effort on some of local small towns, communities, to have a safe and sane 4th of July. And there had been some accidents with fireworks and things like that, and so they promoted their 4th of July celebrations as safe and sane 4th of Julys. And that was the case in 1912, but they wanted to come up with something that would still wow the crowd, because fireworks would wow the crowd. They wanted to replace it with something just as exciting, if not more exciting, than fireworks. And there were some years that there weren't any fireworks. They just had a picnic in the park, things like that. But in 1912, they arranged to have a Curtiss biplane from the Curtiss airfield in Buffalo come down to Hamlin Park for the 4th of July, and it was going to be in the afternoon, and they were going to fly the plane right up here above the baseball diamond, and do demonstrations. And what was really interesting is that they were going to charge 10 cents to just see the airplane, and they were going to charge 25 cents to see the flight. So for the afternoon, they were going to have the plane just sitting out here on the baseball diamond. You could come look at it, and for 25 cents, you could see it actually fly in the air. Don't know how they would do that, because it would have flown above the park, and lots of people would be able to see it regardless of whether they paid. And there was a huge grandstand over here that you could sit on, and they probably charged for the seats on the grandstand, so you'd have a perfect view. I've talked about the grandstand before. I'm going to be writing about the grandstand. So 1912, they had promised this huge exhibition of this Curtiss biplane. And the Easter Advertiser said that it would afford the people of the vicinity and surrounding country a great opportunity to see an aeroplane and witness a flight, something that the people of the surrounding part of this country have never seen, and a possibility that they will never see again. And little did they know that the airplane would become part of our daily lives for a lot of us, for traveling. But at that time, it was really, really exciting. Imagine being in 1912, never have seen an airplane before. There would have been tethered hot air balloon rides, perhaps, at fairs, but to actually see the flying machine, they called it the Aeroplane, a flying machine that people had been talking about for a long time, to actually see it in person would have been just amazing. And it's hard to capture that excitement, because with the technology we have today, very little seems to excite us as much as perhaps it would have back then with an airplane. And they publicized this for weeks, and they were talking about how excited people in East Aurora were to see this airplane demonstration in Hamlin Park. And remember, we didn't have TV back then. We didn't have radio back then, even in 1912. So you would have seen perhaps some drawings and pictures of it, but to actually see it in motion, see it happening, you would have had to see it in person. There would not have been a real opportunity to see an airplane flying in the sky. So it would have been hugely exciting. It's very hard to imagine that excitement today, to put it in those terms. Everyone got ready. They were going to come here, Hamlin Park, on the 4th of July for the afternoon. There was going to be a demonstration. You could go up and see the airplane, go up and or actually see it fly. And a couple days beforehand, the owner of the airplane canceled the show. And he said that it was because so few people had bought tickets that it wasn't going to be worth his time to come down here to Hamlin Park. Conspiracy theories abounded because a lot of people felt that he canceled the show because he really truly couldn't get it off the ground. People were very skeptical that airplanes could actually work, and so I found that very interesting. So in the advertiser, they had said that a lot of people in East Aurora felt that he canceled the show not because so few tickets were sold, but because he couldn't actually get the plane off the ground and he would be embarrassed. And he had never planned to have a demonstration to get the airplane to go off the ground anyway. And that was the true reason why he canceled. I kind of believe that. I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but I can't imagine that too few tickets were sold to this. I just can't imagine, even at a price like that, which would have been a little bit of change, 10 cents to actually just see it or 25 cents to see the flight. But I can't imagine that this wouldn't have been something that people would have paid for, just like they would go see a circus. This would have been sort of a once-in-a-lifetime kind of thing people would be thinking about, and I can't imagine they didn't sell enough tickets. So that was canceled. Everyone was disappointed. The show went on with other things in Hamlin Park for the 4th of July, but there was no airplane demonstration. My research indicates, when I went through the papers to see if there was another one, it took 5 years for them to attempt again. The American Red Cross, the local chapter of the Red Cross here in the community, was going to do it as a fundraiser during the 4th of July. And so in 1917, they planned this big show here in the park. And again, they were all disappointed. It was advertised for weeks in the Advertiser, the Easter Advertiser, the local newspaper, and then a couple days, actually the day of, they canceled it because there was an accident in the airfield, the Curtis Airfield in Buffalo, and they couldn't get the plane here. And so that's why it was canceled. But to make up for it, a pilot actually flew up the plane on July 9th, a couple days later. They advertised it, and people could come outside of their house and watch the plane fly above the village. And they said, the Advertiser said, they did dips, spirals, and other amusements to amuse the people. And the Advertiser actually said they didn't think there was anybody who did not come out of their house to see it on that day in 1917, July 9th. So we have to go several years later, July 4th of 1925, again 100 years ago. And they attempted to do it again. They were going to have another Curtiss biplane demonstration, and unfortunately, well, it did go off. A plane did fly above Hamlin Park, so that is 100th anniversary this year on July 4th of that happening. The only problem is the weather. It was windy, it was rainy, and so they were able to fly the plane over. The only problem is they had to cancel a parachute drop that they were going to do. Someone was going to drop out of a parachute and land on this baseball diamond while the crowds watched in awe as the plane. Just imagine, 1925, the planes had become more popular. People had seen them, but just imagine that being a highlight of the 4th of July. But because of the weather, it was very windy and rainy, according to the news reports. They were afraid to do it here in Hamlin Park because we have had a very large grove of trees. We still have a grove of trees here, and they were afraid that the poor parachutist would end up in one of the trees over here. So they canceled that part of it, but they still did a plane a demonstration. You could watch the plane fly above Hamlin Park on the 4th of July, and they did the parachute drop up on Maple Road. So it did happen 100 years ago this 4th of July, so it is kind of an anniversary here. So that's one of the more interesting parts of the history of the baseball diamond here in Hamlin Park, is it was the site of one of the first airplane demonstrations here in our community, and it would have been really exciting for people to see an airplane back then. Today we take it for granted, we see it in the sky all the time. But back then, it would have been a very big deal to see an airplane. Now, it's a small airplane, a Curtiss airplane, but you would have, people were, it was something people were talking about here in our community and getting really excited about, something that perhaps we wouldn't get excited about today, seeing an airplane. We're just so used to it. So 4th of July, 1925, 100th anniversary coming up here in 2025 of the first airplane demonstration, successful airplane demonstration here in Hamlin Park, 13 years after they had originally attempted to do it. So happy 4th of July, happy Independence Day. We'll see you here for the fireworks. And as always, thank you for joining me for our weekly chats about local history. I am Robert Lowell Goller. I am the Town and Village Historian, but these videos and a lot of my research are not officially connected to my duties as Town and Village Historian. You can also watch these videos on YouTube. If you have not gone there yet, feel free to subscribe to that, and all the videos are saved, and you can watch them and search them and everything if you're interested in particular topics. Again, thank you for joining me. Thank you for keeping history alive, and we'll see you next time.